you go back 100,000 years, you find that the planet is home to at least 6 different humans. You have our ancestors, Homo sapiens, living in East Africa. In Europe and the Middle East, you have the Neanderthals that look maybe like this. This is a reconstruction of a Neanderthal child, very different from the caricatures of Neanderthals as brutish cave people. In Asia, you had other species like Homo erectus and Homo denisova. And the most important thing to know about all these different human species is that none of them was important. They were insignificant animals. Again, we are used to thinking about humans as the center of the world, the most important animals, the most important thing in the universe, us. But going back 100,000 years, you have less than 1 million humans in all the vast area from Indonesia to Spain. You have less than 1 million humans of all the species combined. It's just like one neighborhood in Mexico City today. And the influence of all these humans on the world was negligible. They were not important. It was just like, you know, you have jellyfish and you have woodpeckers and you have humans. Just another animal. But if you fast forward to the situation today, which in evolutionary term, it's a very short period, 100,000 years. As you fast forward to today, you find that we have become the most important factor in the global ecology. Today in the world, there is just one human species that remained, us, Homo sapiens. We probably exterminated all the others. When our ancestors spread from East Africa, they drove to extinction the Neanderthals and all the rest. So there is just one human species. But we dominate the planet. If you check the population of planet Earth, of big animals today on planet Earth, I'm not talking about the ants or the worms, only about big animals. Big, let's say, from penguin upwards. You check who populates planet Earth. So you find us, Homo sapiens, there are 7 billion of us, and if you take all the people today in the world together and put them on a very, very large scale, you will find that they weigh together about 300 million tons. There are 300 million tons of humanity on the planet. Now, who else populates the planet? You have the domesticated animals, cows, chickens, pigs, that we have enslaved to our needs and desires and that we control. And if you take all of them, the cows and the chickens and all the rest, and put them on a very large scale, you'll find that they weigh about 700 million tons. Together you have already 1,000 million tons of humans and our domesticated animals. Now, who else is on the planet? Not much. If you take all the other animals, all the wild animals, all the giraffes and rhinoceroses and elephants and dolphins and whales and penguins and so forth, and put them on a very large scale, you will find that they weigh between 40 million and 100 million tons only. That's less than 10%. Less than 10% of the population of planet Earth today is wild animals. All the rest is us and our domesticated animals. To give just a few more figures, there are today in the world, in the entire world, there are 200,000 wolves, wild wolves, compared to 500 million domesticated dogs. In Germany, the country of the big bad wolf and little Red Riding Hood, how many wolves live today in Germany? Less than 100. And even these are mostly Polish wolves that stole over the border in the last few years. And in Germany, at the same time, you have 5 million dogs. So this is the comparison. If you look, for example, penguins, so there are 50 million penguins in the whole world, which sounds a lot until you compare this to chickens and find that there are 50 billion chickens. There are 1,000 chickens for every penguin in the world. So we obviously control this planet. And the question I would like to address is how exactly an insignificant species of African ape became the ruler of the entire planet within a very, very short time, in evolutionary terms, 100,000 years. Now, usually, when we ask this question, what is the secret of our success, we tend to look for the answer on the individual level. We want to believe, I want to believe, that there is something special about me that makes me such a superior being to a chimpanzee, or to a dog, or to a wolf, or to a cow. Something special about my body, or my brain, or something. But the fact is that on the individual level, Homo sapiens is not a very special creature, is not a very superior animal. If you take me and a chimpanzee and place us together on a lone island, and we had to struggle for survival, I would definitely place my bets on the chimpanzee. And this is not something wrong with me personally. I guess if they take almost any of you, any human, and put him alone or her alone with a chimpanzee on an island, the chimpanzee will do better. So it's not so our success as a species is not because as individuals we are far superior. Our success as a species owes to our unique collective capabilities. We are the only animal in the world that can cooperate flexibly in very large numbers. There are other animals that can cooperate in large numbers, like the social insects, like the ants, the bees, but their cooperation is not flexible. There is basically one way in which a beehive can function, in which the bee society is organized, and if there is a new danger or a new opportunity facing the beehive, the bees cannot reinvent their social system overnight. Say, have a revolution, execute the queen, and let's have a communist dictatorship in the beehive. The bees can't do that. And now other social animals, like the chimpanzees or the dolphins or the wolves, they are much more flexible than the bees and the ants. They know how to cooperate in different ways. But the problem with the chimpanzees or the dolphins is that they can cooperate only with small numbers, very small numbers, because cooperation among chimpanzees or dolphins is based on intimate knowledge, one of the other. If I'm a chimpanzee, and you're a chimpanzee, and I want to cooperate with you, I need to know you personally. I need to know if you're a nice chimpanzee, if you're an evil chimpanzee, can I rely on you? So they can't cooperate in thousands because one chimpanzee cannot have intimate knowledge, personal knowledge of thousands of others. Human beings, at least of the species Homo sapiens, are the only animal that can combine both abilities. We can cooperate very flexibly, even more than chimpanzees or dolphins, but we can do so with huge numbers of complete strangers. We can cooperate with millions, hundreds of millions, even billions today. And this is what really makes us superior to all the other animals, this ability to cooperate flexibly in very large numbers. Take even this lecture, this talk, as an example. I don't know most of you. This is the first time I'm seeing most of you. So you're strangers to me, and I'm basically a stranger to you. And I don't know, like the crew of the airplane that brought me here from Israel. And I don't know the persons who invented and manufactured this microphone, maybe in China somewhere. And I don't know the people, I don't personally know the people who wrote all the articles and books about chimpanzees and Neanderthals that I've read in preparation for this lecture. And even though I don't know all these people, nevertheless, we all cooperate in a very sophisticated way to create this global exchange of knowledge, which is this lecture is all about. And this is something that is unique to us Chimpanzees cannot do that. Chimpanzees never give lectures to strangers. You'll never see a chimpanzee going, say, hundreds of kilometers to another chimpanzee band and then gives them a lecture about bananas or something that they should know. It never happens. They talk, of course, but only with their friends and family. With chimpanzees, they actually know. Now, cooperation, it should be emphasized when I'm speaking about the unique abilities to cooperate. Cooperation is not always nice. All the horrible things humans have been doing over the last centuries are also based on large-scale cooperation. Prisons are a system of large-scale cooperation. Concentration camps, slaughterhouses, armies, arms factories, these are all also examples of large-scale flexible cooperation. So for better and for worse, our success and our impact as a species is based on this unique ability to cooperate in very large numbers. And the question that usually arises in our mind when we think about it is what exactly enables us, Homo sapiens, to do this thing that no other animal can do? How come we can cooperate with thousands, with millions of strangers whom we have never met before? What is the source, the root of this unique ability? And the answer that I would like to suggest is that the imagination is the source of our power, of our ability to cooperate effectively. The really unique human ability is to create imagined realities together, to create fiction, to invent fictional stories, mythologies, and spread them around. And when millions of people all believe in the same fictions, this is what enables all of them to follow the same laws and to cooperate effectively. When millions of strangers believe in the same mythologies, in the same legends, in the same fictions, this is the basis for all large-scale human cooperation. And this is something only humans can do. You can never convince a chimpanzee to do something for you by promising that chimpanzee that, look, if you do what I tell you, you know what will happen? After you die, you'll go to chimpanzee heaven. And there you will receive lots and lots of bananas for your good deeds. So now do what I tell you. No chimpanzee will ever believe such a story. The only animal in the world that can believe such stories is Homo sapiens. And this is why Homo sapiens rules the world. Because this is what enables thousands, millions, hundreds of millions who never met before to cooperate very effectively. Now, it's relatively easy, perhaps, to accept this idea in the religious sphere. Okay, understand that, say, in the religious sphere, millions of people can cooperate and build a cathedral, or build a hospital, or go on crusade, because they all believe the same stories about God and heaven and hell and the afterlife. It's perhaps easy to accept. But what I would like to emphasize is that this is not restricted only to the religious sphere. It is true of all other fields of human activity as well. Examine any large-scale human cooperation, and you will always find at the basis some kind of fiction, of fictional stories. You take, for example, politics. Nations and states are fictions, just like God or heaven. They don't exist anywhere except in the stories we invent and spread. A mountain is a reality. A river is a reality. But a nation is not a reality. It's just a story that we invented and spread around. A good way to see it is that if you really want to check what is real, a good way to check it is to ask, can it suffer? A human being can suffer. An animal can suffer, but a nation never suffers. It's a metaphor. we say that when the nation loses a war, it suffers, but this is just a metaphor. It cannot suffer, it doesn't really exist, it's just a story in our own minds. Similarly, in the legal sphere, perhaps the most important fiction today, all over the world, in the legal sphere, is human rights. We've heard this story so many times, human rights, human rights, human rights, that we take it for granted. And we forget that this is something we invented. It's not a biological reality. Humans have no rights, at least not in biological terms, just as no other animals have rights. Chimpanzees have no rights, woodpeckers have no rights, jellyfish have no rights, Homo sapiens too have no rights. You take a human, you cut him or her open, you look inside, you find the heart, the kidney, you find all kinds of cells and neurons and blood and whatever. You don't find any rights. The only place you find human rights is in the stories that people have invented and spread, that we have rights. All humans have rights. And you hear it so many times, so you think this is reality. But no, it's just a story that we invented. And similarly in the economic field, our economy, perhaps the most successful and most important fiction ever invented by humans is money. What money is? Money is basically a story that we invented. We take this green piece of paper, the dollar bill, and you look at it, it has no value. You can't do anything with it. You can't eat it, you can't drink it, you can't wear it, it has no value. But then come along these master storytellers, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, the president of the United States, the president of Mexico, and so forth. And they tell you, you see this green piece of paper? It is worth 10 bananas. And if you believe this, not just me, if everybody believes it, it works. When millions of people all believe in the same story, it really works. It enables us to trade with one another effectively. Chimpanzees can trade with barter. One chimpanzee can bring a banana and say to another chimpanzee, look, I give you a banana, give me a coconut. Okay. But you come to a chimpanzee with a dollar bill, you won't get anything in return. Because they don't believe in this story. And the unique thing about money is that it's probably the only story that everybody believes without exception. Other stories like God, not everybody believes in God. Not everybody believes in human rights. Not everybody believes in the United States or in Israel. But everybody without exception, almost, believes in money and believes in the dollar bill. Take, for example, Osama bin Laden. He didn't believe, he hated American religion and American politics and American culture, but he had nothing against American dollars. In this story, he was very willing to accept as many American dollars as you would have given him. Now, when people hear this kind of theory, they usually find it easy to accept that human cooperation is based on mythology, is based on fiction, when it is about primitive societies. Okay, some tribe in the jungle may base its social system on everybody coming around the campfire every full moon and dancing around the campfire and telling stories and mythologies about gods and spirits and ancestral spirits. Okay, this we can accept. It's much harder for people to realize that our modern society and even our modern economy is based on exactly the same kind of foundations, also based on these mythologies and fictional stories. The main difference is that the stories we tell today are much stranger and much more difficult to understand than the stories that our ancestors told around the campfire thousands of years ago. Back then, they told stories about ancestral spirits. Grandfather died, but he's still watching us from the sky, so be careful and do what I tell you to do. This is relatively easy to understand, this story. But today we have far more powerful and sophisticated shamans called lawyers and economists, and they tell such difficult stories to understand. What do they mean by their spirits, by their ghosts? So, in order to clarify it, I will take one example of one extremely important a fiction that dominates our world today, and I chose on purpose to take it from the economic field, not from religion or politics. And I'm referring to the modern corporation. The world, the economy today is dominated by corporations, by limited liability companies. We all know them. We have Mercedes and Toyota and Peugeot and Google and Microsoft. These are the spirits, the giants that rule our world and that we have to obey. And ask yourself, what exactly are they? So I'll take the example of Peugeot. Peugeot is one of the oldest and most successful car corporations in the business of manufacturing cars. It was established back in 1896, I think, by a Frenchman called Armand Peugeot. And it's still one of the main car manufacturers in the world. So let's ask ourselves, what exactly is this entity Peugeot, which employs about 200,000 people and has revenues of about 50 billion euros each year? What exactly is it? So one thought is that perhaps Peugeot is the vehicles, the cars that it manufactures. But this is obviously not true. The corporation is not the product, it's not the cars. Maybe there will be some big catastrophe and all the cars of Peugeot are destroyed. This will not harm the company at all, just the opposite. The market will be bigger, there will be more demand, the Peugeot will make a lot of money, manufacturing and selling a lot of new cars. So the company is obviously not the vehicles, it's not the cars. Another option, perhaps the company is the factories and the machinery that manufacture all these cars. But this is also not true. The corporation is distinct from the buildings and from the machinery in the buildings. Again, some big catastrophe may occur, a war, an earthquake, and all the factories are destroyed. The corporation doesn't disappear because of that. It continues to exist. It has money, or it can borrow money from the banks and build new factories, buy new machinery, and go back to business, no problem. So the company is not the factories. Maybe then the company is the workers, all the mechanics and secretaries and whatever that man all the positions within the company. But again, this is not true. The company is distinct from the people working for it. For example, maybe all the workers of Peugeot would come together in a union and will strike, demanding, we want higher wages from Peugeot. And the managers will get very upset and will say, you are all fired, go away, we are moving production to China, there things are easier. So all the workers are dismissed, but the corporation continues to exist. Well, the corporation is not the workers. Maybe then the corporations is these managers who make all the decisions. But again, the corporation is distinct from the managers. All the managers may go on a plane and fly to China to sign this very important deal, and on the way the plane crashes and all the managers are killed. It doesn't mean that the corporation disappears. It simply will hire new managers, no problem. So the corporation is not the managers. Maybe then the corporation is the stockholders, the people who own the company, own the corporation. But again, this is not true, because they can sell all those stocks to somebody else, and the corporation still exists. It is not identical to the stockholders. What then is this corporation? And this is true not only about Peugeot, but about all corporations in the world. Peugeot is a fiction. It's a story. It's a legend. Like you tell stories about ancestral spirits, so we tell stories, or our lawyers tell stories about these entities, these mythical entities called corporations. It's a relatively new story. Back in the Middle Ages, there were no corporations, no limited liability companies. Back then, businesses were identical to the people who owned them. If I had a business for manufacturing wagons back in the Middle Ages, I was the business. This meant that if I, for example, borrowed money to establish my workshop and I couldn't repay the debt, then they could persecute me personally, take away my house, my fields, take my children, sell them to slavery, even take me and put me in jail because I was 100% liable for all the debts of my workshop. I was the workshop. And similarly, if I sold you a wagon and after a week the wagon stopped working, the wagon broke, so you came back and demanded compensation from me personally. And if I couldn't give you compensation, you could take away my cow or my house or my child as compensation. I was 100% liable for any damages or any debts incurred by my workshop. This was a very difficult situation in economic terms because it discouraged entrepreneurship. People were afraid to establish new businesses. People were afraid to take economic risk because they knew that if they take a loan to establish, say, a workshop and it fails, it will ruin completely their lives and the lives of their families. And this restricted economic activity. So after some time in the 15th, 16th, 17th century, people came up with this amazing invention, this amazing story, the corporation. And lawyers began telling this amazing story that, look, you don't have to be the workshop, you don't have to be the business. You can create a fictional entity called a corporation or a limited liability company, and it is distinct from you. And it is the business, not you. So you create a corporation, and then the corporation borrows money. And if it cannot repay the money, like you borrowed money, the corporation borrowed money to build a factory, and business is slow, and it cannot repay the debt, and it goes bankrupt, and the bank comes, or the persons who gave the money come and say, we want our money, and they come to me and say, you took the money, give us back our money, or we will take your house, or your field, or your children. Then I say, oh, it wasn't me who took your money, it was the corporation that took your money. So you can sue the corporation, but you can take my house, it wasn't me who took your money. And this was an amazing invention, because once people got used to this idea, and started believing in the existence of these fictional entities called corporations, it greatly encouraged economic activity, entrepreneurship, because if you had some wild idea of, say, having a startup, you could try and realize your dream without the danger that if it fails, it will completely ruin you and your family. So this was a very important step in economic terms. The question still remains, how exactly do you create these new entities called corporations? And the answer is that you create corporations in exactly the same way that shamans and priests and rabbis and so forth have created ghosts and demons and angels and gods for thousands of years. You tell a story and you convince everybody to believe your story, and then whatever entity it is created. So to give a simple example, maybe the most famous example, you go to the Catholic Church, and there every Sunday during the ceremony of Mass, the Catholic priest creates God in the ceremony of Mass, in the Eucharist. According at least to the dogma of the Catholic Church, the priest, when he is dressed in all his wonderful robes, standing in church, he takes this piece of bread, consecrated bread, and pronounces some magical words. Hoc est corpus meum, this is my body. And the moment that the priest pronounces these words, hocus pocus, the bread becomes God. This is actually the source of the magical word hocus pocus. When the peasants in medieval Europe, they heard the priest saying hoc est corpus meum, they didn't know Latin, So it sounded like hocus pocus. And this is the idea that when you say hocus pocus, one thing is transformed into another thing. So this was the story that the Catholic Church told. And as long as millions of devout Catholics believe that story, they behave as if this piece of bread is now God, literally. So this is how you create gods, or you create demons, or angels, or ghosts. And in exactly the same way, you create business corporations. You don't go to church, you go to another magical place, the office of a lawyer, and there the local shaman, dressed in wonderful robes, pronounces all kinds of curses and oaths in a language that nobody understands, except lawyers. And you write this story on a piece of paper, and you place the signature at the bottom of the paper, and hocus pocus, a corporation is born. This is how Armand Peugeot created the company, the corporation of Peugeot. Back in 1896, you went to the office of a lawyer and made this big ceremony, and they wrote the story on a piece of paper, and the corporation was born. And as long as millions of people believe in this story, they begin to behave as if the corporation really exists. So it's all really a story in our imagination, in our common imagination. Now, it should be emphasized that it's not easy to tell effective stories. The problem is not in telling the story, this is the easy part. The difficulty is in convincing everybody to believe in the same stories. And much of history actually revolves around this question. How to convince millions of people to believe a particular story and not any other story about God, or about money, or about the nation, or whatever. And this is also the source of most conflicts in history. When people ask, why do we fight each other? And very often people say, we fight each other for the same reasons that chimpanzees, or wolves, or lions are fighting. We fight for territory, we fight for food, we fight for mates. This is not true. In the vast majority of cases, we fight for stories. We fight for fictions. The vast majority of wars and revolutions and revolts in history were not due to scarcity of food or scarcity of territory. The French Revolution, for example, was led not by famished peasants. There was enough food in France at the time. Or if you think about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it's not about food. There is enough food between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean to feed everybody. It's not about food, it's not like among chimpanzees. The problem is that different people have different fictions in their minds, and they cannot agree on a common story. And this is why they fight. And you see this by the fact that when finally people can come up with a certain story that everybody accepts, there is no more conflict. 100 years ago, Europe was in the midst of one of the most terrible wars in history, the First World War. And many people were convinced that this is inevitable because the French and the Germans and the Russians and everybody, there is limited territory, there is not enough food, so they have to fight each other. But you fast forward 100 years, and you see that there is enough territory for everybody. There is enough food for everybody. There is now peace in at least most of Europe. It's unimaginable that, say, France and Germany may go to war against one another in the next year, in the next 2 years. It's unimaginable. Not because they suddenly have more territory to share, but because they have found a common story, the story of European identity, that Germans and French can both believe in. They can both share this story. So to conclude, we can say that Homo sapiens dominates the world because Homo sapiens, alone of all the animals, lives in a dual reality. All other animals live in an objective reality. The world of chimpanzees comprises objective entities, like rivers and trees and lions and elephants and so forth. This is the world of the chimpanzee. Sapiens too live in a world in which there is an objective stratum. We have trees and rivers and lions in our world as well. But we sapiens have constructed, on top of this objective reality, we have constructed a second layer of fictional reality, of stories that exist only in our mind, stories about business corporations, about nations, about gods, and we live in our reality both kinds of entities exist. And what is very important about history is that as time went by, the fictional reality became more and more powerful, more and more important, until we reach today, when you can say that fiction completely, almost completely, dominates the world. Today, the very survival of lions, of rivers, of trees, depends on the decisions of fictional entities, like business corporations, like banks, like countries, like states. Entities that actually exist only in our common imagination. Thank you very much.